Hello, I'm Rob Pires.
Grassroots coach Manisha Taylor.
Christian Carambeu.
Matt Hodgson, Director of the 4-Year Plan.
I'm Rob Lusher.
Dave McLaughlin.
Andy Copeland from the Glennet Southern Amateur League.
Philip Wick, I'm CEO of 14.
Former Chairman of IBIS FC.
Chairman of Alexandra Park FC.
And you're watching
Pitch Talk.
Pitch Talk.
the only place to get your Monday night footballing fix.
The pitch is where we eat.
The pitch is where we sleep.
And the pitch is where we talk. Make sure you join the revolution, the football revolution.
Let's have a bit of fun, actually. Let's do some word association.
There's two of us, how are we going to do this?
So basically what I want is the first word or phrase that comes to mind with each word that I throw out.
We're going to do it one at a time, or?
Yeah, let's do it one at a time. Let's start with the FA.
Football. You're not doing it? Oh, am I doing it as well? It's not going to work if we have to wait. If we have to wait, you get to sit and think about it.
FIFA.
Blatter. Blatter, yeah.
I know my word on that. On him anyway. UEFA.
Champions League. Useless.
That's good. Youth.
Inspire. Hope.
Football.
Women's. You're thinking, you're not supposed to think. Game.
Arsenal.
Red. Winners.
Arsenal ladies.
Oh,
Alex
see now.
Scott.
Champions.
Chelsea.
Best.
Pride.
Chelsea ladies.
Up and coming. It's two words.
Young.
We'll let you get away with it. Grassroots.
Rising.
Yeah, I'll go Rising too.
Hope Powell.
Legacy. You're cheating.
Disappointment.
You're cheating. You need to answer first next time.
Mark Sampson.
Hope again.
Pride.
Manager.
Leader.
Inspiree, what's the word? The person who inspires.
Coach.
Boss.
Leader.
Wages.
Money.
Low.
Manchester City.
New.
Yeah, new.
Manchester City ladies.
Same.
Ugh,
Always got to spill
we
it
don't
too.
do men's football.
Steven Gerrard.
Oh, you're going to kill me. Overrated.
Old.
I'm going to ignore one of those. Frank Lampard.
Hero.
I was going to say the same thing.
England.
Lionesses.
Again. Pride again.
Premier League.
Overrated.
Top.
FAWSL.
Growing.
Love it.
Alex Scott.
Best England player.
Skillful.
Casey Stoney.
Role model.
Captain.
Rachel Yankee.
Hero.
Hero.
Heather Rabats.
Changing.
I'll go with that.
Bristol Rovers Academy ladies.
Enjoyment, I just love going there.
Yeah.
Liverpool ladies.
Surprise.
Excitement.
Men's football.
Overrated.
Corrupt.
I agree on that second one. Women's football.
Inspiring.
Down to earth. 3 words.
Yeah. Boreham Wood.
Far away.
Back horse of nowhere.
Girls on the ball.
Us.
Pride. I'm proud of it.
And the last one, just for fun, Scotty the Rabbit.
Handsome.
Oh, I love him. He's so sweet. I miss him. Missing. Longing. He's at home in his cage.
Handsome.
I love this segment. Women in football is our next chapter. Do you think that there are a lot of barriers stopping women getting into football, whether it be playing or coaching at a grassroots level?
Well, there are some, I think, yeah. I think some of it's to do with society's view on it in general. I know England is the home of football kind of mentality, but I think there is still quite a sexist attitude towards women's football. Why, I don't know, but I think that's one barrier. I also think the kind of things that girls are expected to do, or, you know, the cool thing to do, especially between formative years like 16 to 25 type thing, is generally the time when girls drop out of sports because of various other things they want to get into. And I think now there's definitely a growing number of role models. We might see that kind of thing change, hopefully.
I think there's also a growing amount of options. I mean, both to play and to get your coaching badges and to coach. It's not such a closed shop anymore. But yeah, it's still in its early stages, I think. I mean, it's even when I was young, there was not really many options, and that was, 10, 12 years ago. So it's still very much in its infancy, as it were. But it will get better. I am positive about that. People's attitudes are changing to the game. It's really nice. I mean, the amount of taxi drivers I've had conversations, and they've been really like, wow, women's football is amazing. Those kind of conversations where they're typically the most cockney of men, the most macho of men, and they actually really are open-minded about it. And it's really nice to hear that it really is changing people's minds. But I think that's the fact that it's more in the media now. BBC show a lot, BT Sport now have the coverage. I mean, it's out there, it's in the papers, which it never ever was before. So it's getting a lot more access. And I think once it's on TV and once it's on the first two channels, people will turn it on, and they won't turn it off because it's football, and they'll actually see it's a really, really good game. Whereas before, I think everyone's have these preconceptions about what it's like, and it's still as bad as Sunday League football, and or worse, and that the women aren't good enough, and it's
girls
not
don't
strong
play
enough.
football.
Yeah. Whereas once they see it and they open their minds to it, they can completely change their mind. So it's a slow process.
I still think we have a way to go when you look at other places like France or Germany or Sweden. The view that men or society have towards women in football is very different there. So I think we have a way to go on that. Yeah, in that sense.
Do you think the IFAB allowing the wearing of veils and turbans after extensive testing, do you think that's going to be a barrier that's going to help women in, say, the Middle Eastern countries get into football more?
I'd like to think that's another barrier that they're knocking down, definitely, because obviously that would have been a huge barrier. Who was it we were talking to that was saying they had a tournament in Afghanistan, was it?
Peace One Day.
Peace One Day, yeah, where they organised a tournament, and over, how many people was it that came? 1,000 girls?
Yeah, and they were all girls in Afghanistan.
And they all came to this tournament. I mean, if there are barriers like that, where it's, okay, for us it's easy to say something as simple as wearing a hijab, which probably isn't the case in their country. But if it's something where they can just say, yes, you can wear it, it doesn't affect the way they play, it doesn't, improve the way they play, it doesn't give them an advantage over the other team. Why not?
It should never have been a problem in the first place. Like with women's football, that should never have been a problem in the first place. But I guess with everything, we have to start breaking down all these barriers and start making people realise that difference isn't such a big deal, and that we're all can manage pretty nicely together.
Either way, it's 90 minutes, it's the same size pitch,
Except the referees, I don't think the referees in women's football are as bad as in the men's game, from time to time.
Really?
I don't think the referees in women's football have the celebrity that the men's referees do.
Yeah. Then again, for me, referees should not be celebrities.
No, but the problem is the media give them that status, don't they? So.
Do you think women's football can ever be as big as the men's game?
No, personally. But I think it's a very different, I don't think it's something that should be compared to the men's game. I don't think they don't think there are two things that are to look at and say these are the same, but one has more coverage than the other. I think women's football stands alone. And I think it could be as big as any other women's sport, but given
I think
more coverage.
If you look also to the example of America, where the women's game is much bigger than, it's grown, the men's game over there has grown in recent years with the MLS. But I mean, the women's game since 1999 has been huge over there, and it draws thousands and thousands of people to watch it. And it's much more popular than men's soccer. Like more women play it than the men. And it's a good example to have because it can be big. It might not be Premier League big because that's just ridiculous extent, but I think it can definitely grow a lot bigger than it is right now.
I also think it comes with the changing of attitudes. Like I mentioned earlier, the likes of France and Germany, and when we went to see Wolfsburg play in the Champions League against Arsenal, it was like a very mixed crowd of people. The stadium was full. It wasn't about going to see a women's match. It was about going to support your team. It didn't matter that it was the women's team. It was about the town coming together and supporting their team, and they were all there and they were all singing, and that's the way it should be. It should be looked at, my team is playing, I want to go see them play. It shouldn't be, oh, the women's game, I don't want to see that.
It is changing. I mean, hanging around the clubs, there are a growing amount of men attending, and men who follow the men's team and the women's team. And it's nice to see that there is a change in attitudes, definitely.
I think for people like Arsenal supporters as well, it's probably more enjoyable to support the women's team because you're more likely to win trophies. So that's probably changing the attitudes as well.
We've got a co-host who is an Arsenal supporter, as you know. So yeah.
I'm sure you can contest to that. Then it's.
On the other side of that coin, actually, at least the Liverpool ladies have won a title in the last 20 years. But yeah, I will leave that one aside because it's good. No, it's good. Great achievement. We have a video question from our co-host. Did you, man? Another one.
If you were in a position of power within the women's game, what would you change and why?
Does that mean a position of power now as the women's game stands?
Yeah.
I think one thing I would make sure happened is stadia, and the use, and make sure that Arsenal play at the Emirates, Liverpool play at Anfield, England play at Wembley. I think it's very important to get games in. You might not fill them, but I think to be able to drive interest for the game, it's very important to have them on the big stages. Chelsea, I mean, I don't understand why there is such a big deal about allowing the women to play. And the women now play on, they play on below conference level pitches, and that's not great for top league football, is it?
But on top of that, if you can go to Anfield for £5, you're going to go.
Yeah, you're damn right.
You know what I mean? But like, you're gonna drive people. People are gonna go to the game. More people are gonna go to the game than they would if they're playing in Barnwood or,
Would then the concern be, are people going for the women's game or are they going for the stadium?
Does that matter though? If more people are going, more people are seeing the women's game. That's the important thing. Then more people are going for the women's game, not for the stadium. But
because they're more likely to go back.
It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You kind of have to start somewhere. You have to give them, they're not going to go to Barnwood to watch it. So
I think there definitely is a huge problem if that a lot of the women's games are in quite restricted places.
Or not near their men's stadium.
The next after April, the next England women's game is being played in Shrewsbury at 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening. Now, you can get there, but you definitely can't get out of Shrewsbury at that time of night. Yeah. And why not have it in somewhere like Wembley, Milton Keynes, where there are so many trains or public transport to allow fans to get there and get back again? It just seems common sense to me. So yeah, that'd be one thing I'd change.
Yeah, I think them playing at Wembley is another thing as well, because the international games don't happen that often, but when they do, again, there's so many people going to Wembley tours anyway. If they knew they could go and see a match for £5 or for £10, they're going to go. So, and that's then going to increase the coverage of the women's game, and more people will realise that it's a lot better than they think.
I think having a central England stadium is important.
Yeah.
You see Sweden, they have the one in Gothenburg. Scotland now have their home ground at Motherwell. It's very they're all in the same place. Whereas with England at the moment, you're travelling all over the country. It can be north, it can be south. And I think it needs to get to the point where you do have one central place where everyone knows where it is, kind of plan in advance, because you're often not told until quite late.
But it also creates that feeling of this is our ground and you're coming into our ground, and good luck because this is our territory. Yeah. If you're moving all the time, it's a new ground for both teams. that almost takes away some of the home advantage.
I mean, you mentioned, I want to just kind of draw back slightly to a point you mentioned a little earlier about the women's teams playing on below conference level pitches. Obviously, the FA said in 2013 they'll dedicate 150 million to help the grassroots game. There's where that money's going, I don't know, but that's a completely different issue. But do you think the FA need to do more to help the women's game as well, especially in terms of what you mentioned about the pitches?
I think anyone can always do more. I think they need to make sure that the men's team are right behind them and give them that support. I think the fact that they're changing, personally for me, changing it to a summer league is a great idea. I know some people disagree, but in January this year, something like 95% of the games were called off because of the weather.
Yeah. We had that at grassroots level as well.
Yeah, and it was ridiculous. There were no games being played at any level, and now the seasons are going to have to be extended. Whereas in the summer it is a lot drier. Yeah. There's not so many fixture changes because of the weather. It's also not on at the same time as men's football, which is when you have Arsenal men's playing and you have Arsenal ladies. I mean, your Arsenal fans are going to go and watch the Arsenal men's because that's the way it is at the moment. Whereas if you have them at different times, you're going to generate, Arsenal fans are going to come watch Arsenal ladies if they don't have something else to do. So I do think it's a nice idea, the Summer League, definitely.
It would also should give the teams the opportunity to play in their men's grounds because they're not going to be used.
Although that doesn't always the case.
Yeah. You mentioned about support support from the men's sides. What do you think about the fact that Manchester United don't have a women's football team? Do you think it hurts the credibility of the women's game not to have such a big side represented?
I think it's unusual.
I think it hurts the credibility of Manchester United, to be honest. The strange thing was that United pulled their team just as we hosted the Euros. And that was meant to be when women's football was starting to be on the up in this country, and they just pulled it for I don't know what reason.
It's not as if they can't afford it, but...
and of any of the clubs, they should be the ones leading the way, and it is disappointing that they aren't. I mean, to have that name, I mean, whether you like them or you hate them, is a huge brand all around the world, and to have that name associated with women's football would be a massive pull. I don't really understand why they haven't.
There's a serious football culture though in Manchester. It's like that with Liverpool. It's so important having a Liverpool and Everton team because you've got people up there, you're either red or blue, and it's a similar thing in Manchester. So, you know, I imagine having a Manchester United team would be equally as popular as having a Man City team. So I just find it unusual that they don't have one.
Yeah, they're one of the biggest clubs in the world. Why not?
Coming back down to grassroots level, actually, Carla Parker, captain of Haringey Borough Women's FC, via Facebook sent us a couple of questions. Carla says, a couple of questions spring to mind as a fellow female footballer. She said, number one, how do you retain the interest and commitment of young women when they have left the realms of school and provision is poor in college if they decide to continue education? And how can smaller women's teams attract more interest and funding in the women's game? Many teams fold or merge for this reason. And number three, what are the top three challenges for the progression of female football? Looking forward to hearing the interview. Best regards, Carla, captain of Haringey Borough Women's Football Club. It's quite a bit to take in there.
I think 1 and 2 are kind of linked. I think with young girls, obviously I think it's important having female role models, and I think the kind of things where the players are going to schools and that kind of thing is very important, because it's this idea of, you know, it being cool to play football, or I suppose for young girls it's you have different challenges to boys do, and you know, I think knowing that there's visible women out there playing sports and playing football is an important thing, because you know, girls can aspire to be like them, or you know, especially if girls are trying to get fit or keep in shape or whatever, having this as an option is important. I think that then leads on to increasing awareness in more women's teams and hopefully preventing them fold. If you get more girls involved and more girls interested in it, you're going to have, you know, less likely hopefully for teams to fold. But I think those two are quite closely linked.
I think it's always a tough one, the question about keeping people interested and keeping girls involved in sport in general, not just in football, but football especially because it's seen as quite a macho sport, I guess. But I think also having the provision where it maybe not to have such a competitive, I mean, people think sport should always be competitive, but if girls can go and just play for enjoyment rather than for competition where it gets serious or, I don't know, egos get involved, you know, if they can have that outlet, it's definitely really important.
You mentioned there about men's football being kind of seen as macho. I think if those stereotypes are kind of addressed as well in women's football, it might make it more of an attractive option for girls.
Do you think attitudes are changing?
I think they are changing, yeah. But there is that stereotype in women's football.
I think it helps that if you look at a lot of the top women now, and they go against the stereotype. I mean, the stereotype is of having a very macho woman playing football. It's not like that at all, and it's just a sort of figment of people's imagination. And if you look at all the top clubs and all the top players, they are definitely not. You know.
I think though the FA are addressing that, and the FAWSL do, you know, discreetly address that when it comes to things like photo shoots and stuff for the game, and when they're preparing stuff for the game. You know, I think they are. Not directly addressing it, but by having the girls go through these kind of makeup shoots and stuff like that for the game, and making people realise that it's not that stereotypical butch girl playing football, which is getting, I think, is going.
Definitely diminishing since when I was a kid. Yeah. It's definitely. What was the last question?
And also, what are the top 3 challenges for the progression of female football?
I think one of the big ones is media, sexism. What would you say the third one is?
They're all kind of interlinked. I mean, growing interest, you kind of need you need media for the growing interest, but you kind of need growing interest from media as well, you know what I mean? I do think sexism and changing of attitudes is another concept. And then again, getting younger girls continuing on sport. I mean, it's difficult for me to address personally because I always played sport. There was, you know, it wasn't something I could give up. So it is kind of, I can't really understand why girls might want to stop doing something that they enjoy doing, but then I suppose everyone's different.
Have you seen any of the activities from one of our other Pitch Talk Meets guests, Manisha Taylor, who's involved with the Rachel Yankee Schools project? Do you think how important do you think those kind of initiatives are in terms of? I mean, in terms of pretty much getting more women involved in football and younger women involved in football, how important do you think those kind of initiatives are?
Hugely important. I mean, I follow Manisha's travels on Twitter and Instagram with Rachel, and I mean the fact that they're going into schools all around the country. Rachel Yankee's there as the complete role model of how. I mean, she's now got an OBE, you know.
Yeah.
She's probably at the pinnacle of the game, and for those young kids, those young girls to look up to her and say, I could be her in 15 years' time. It's hugely powerful. It's a lot of, like, when I was their age, I didn't have that. Yeah. So having that role model is definitely going to be helpful.
I think, you know, a lot of the players are getting into that now. I know Tash Dowie has had camps, and Jill Scott has had camps, and things like that.
And the FAWSL send their players around to schools around the country all the time to try and get the presence and awareness going and to coach the kids. And there is a real, like, behind the scenes scheme going on to try and raise this awareness.
So is it a case of do you think there's not enough media coverage of that? Is that a problem then?
I think it's growing. Again, I think the problem is it's always going to take time. But everyone's making these little steps, and it will go a long way. And the more people like Manisha and Rachel Yankee doing it, the better.
Yeah.
There's in regards to that question, actually, the first of quite a few questions from Big T, aka Thomas Hewitt, who we always throw the T's up for. He asked via email, what characteristics do you both consider makes a complete player in a women's game? Is there anybody within the game you consider to be the standout player, that all-inspiring woman in football that women in football should look to illuminate and look up to as a role model on what a female footballer should be? So is there that one kind of standout player, and what makes a complete player?
In the women's game, I think honesty is a huge thing.
Yeah. I mean, they all have passion. This is the thing.
Yeah, the passion.
Because obviously, as I said, they are playing it for the love of the game purely. So I think that's a hugely important factor.
And I think what is really appealing, well, for me anyway, is the down-to-earth nature of everyone. There are no real crazy egos flying around. I mean, they're obviously really good at what they do, but they don't act like it, do they? When you talk to them as a fan, they don't act like they're...
You ain't getting someone acting like Bertie Big Balls. It's kind of like, no, we're
they
all
act
on
like
a level.
normal people, and they interact like normal people, and I think that's really important.
They're so hard-working. For them, football comes first. There's no other kind of distractions. Thinking of a player, there's quite a few for me that stand out. I think Jill Scott is a really well-rounded player, professional, that has a lot of those qualities.
She has a lot of time for people as well, and a lot of time for the kids. She's a genuinely nice person to interact with, but then on the football field she shows a professional side. She's quite a leader in the camp. I think she's got the serious side to herself, but then she's also got the banter and the jokes, and she's one of the silly ones of the team. So
yeah,
I think she's pretty good one.
You mentioned it kind of in passing, but do you think the Team GB women's team at London 2012 Olympics helped raise the profile of women's football in the UK? And if so, how much? So not just England, we're talking UK generally.
Without doubt.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
It's had a huge impact, all the way, I think, right down. And I think in places like Scotland and Wales, taking in all the regions, and maybe not so much in Northern Ireland, but definitely in Scotland and Wales, I think there has been a visible impact.
And I think the interest, since it's been completely visible, the interest from media outlets since that point in time. I mean, the FAWSL didn't have live games streamed very often, occasional one on ESPN, but it wasn't regular. Now BT Sport are getting involved in regularly streaming, showing games. BBC are involved now, where they didn't do it before. It's huge, the change in attitudes since those Olympic Games.
So there actually really has been a legacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that was always the key word to come
there was,
to come
inspire
out.
a generation, and I think they have done that.
And I'd say the interest from normal people as well. People saw that game either on the TV or in Wembley, and they go, I want to be interested in women's football, and I want to see how I can explore that interest. It's been very visible, the change since that point in time. I really think it was a big catalyst.
Another fan question that we've got actually from Mike Harneman, again another one of the Pitch Talk regulars, via email. He's asked, with the up-and-coming Stevenage FC ladies team joining the Women's Football League Premiership, the third tier of the women's game, do you think it will be beneficial to the women's game to have another team involved? And what do you think they need to do to progress up through the leagues, such as what has happened with the men's side? Because there's been a merging of Stevenage Ladies FC and Stevenage Borough Ladies FC, who one of, obviously, the Stevenage Borough Ladies FC we feature on the grassroots segment of the show. But what do you think of that recent merger as well?
I think anything to strengthen teams is a real plus point. I think, well, the whole concept behind the top tier, the FAWSL, is about sustainability, and that's why the FA has such stringent criteria to join. Because we've seen it in the past, the likes of Charlton and Fulham, they've crashed and burned because they don't have that sustainability behind them. So now it's all about trying to make all clubs sustainable and give them something to aspire to. So lower down the leagues, that's the more sustainable that they can become, the better, and the more that they can push up forward, I think.
I think merging as well.
Things.
By merging, you're kind of showing your intent, that you're planning on growing your team and making it stronger, and I think that's an important feature to have if you want to kind of continue on through the leagues and continue upwards.
Gives you more of a base as well to get players from, to get funding, to get interest from fans, support. Definitely a very positive move, I think.
I hear that. Another question from Big T, aka Tom, who you're going to be throwing T's out quite a lot actually. Can you see a female manager managing the men's England national team in the future?
England national team?
Mm-hmm.
Not for a while, to be totally honest.
Why would that be? Would that be ego based or?
Various reasons. I think it'll take a while for. I think we need to get a woman managing a men's team in the higher leagues first of all. I think that's going to take a few years to do. Then you're going to need this female coach to do well first of all. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if that a male coach might do worse than her. The fact that she's a female adds more pressure onto her. So I think you're going to have a highly successful female coach within men's leagues before you can even think about having a female coach as a national coach, because a lot of it I think is to do with people's perceptions and views towards female coaches.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to take time also to build that pool of coaches that could possibly do it. I mean, if you look at the last 15 years, people would have always said that Hope Powell could possibly have managed a men's side. They might not now, but they always said that she was the most likely, and she probably was. I mean, she was the only name in the book really. But as that pool of talent grows and grows and grows, there'll be more opportunities, but it won't be for a while.
I think if you look at Sian Massey, the first female lineswoman to be in the Premier League, even her decisions are scrutinised more than men's because she's a female, and it's almost like she gets more credit for getting a decision right.
It's the worst thing. She's actually a good liner as well. That's the worst.
So this is the thing. Like if that's happening with lineswomen,
Imagine what happens with the focus and attention of the Football Manager.
That's a good point. I've only just really in the last decade broken that kind of barrier with the foreign managers down with Sven Goran Eriksson, and that didn't necessarily end brilliantly. Another question from Big T, aka Thomas Hewitt. What are your thoughts on male managers in the women's game? Do you believe that more of the opposite sex should be allowed to manage football clubs, or should it be kept to the same genders?
I don't think it makes a blind bit of difference. If you're qualified to manage a team, you should be able to manage a team. I think having experience managing a women's team is important because I think there are different elements. We did discuss how women's games are slightly different to men's games, and there are different expectations and things to focus on. Yeah. So I think having experience in the women's game is important, but I don't think managers should be based on gender. It should be based on experience.
You've mentioned Mark Sampson a couple of times, and one question that I'm quite interested to ask is, do you think Mark Sampson has a tough act to follow after the amount of things that Hope Powell has done for the England team and women's football in general? And if you do think it's a tough act to follow, how tough is it?
I think the way it ended has helped slightly, in that had he come in 3 or 4 years ago, I think it might have been a bit more difficult. She has left a legacy, and I think, obviously women's football is where it is today because of the work she's done. However, I think there was a general consensus that there was a need for change, which I think will contribute to making the transition a little bit easier for him.
And I think he's a young coach, and he did very, very well at Bristol. He's exciting. He's got a lovely character about him. He's very approachable, very personable. He does interviews well. He likes the press, which I'm not sure Hope ever did. And he's very open about everything, whereas Hope Powell ran quite a closed shop. So it's a change in era, it's a change in attitudes, but I know from what he says, he's very keen to remember her legacy and to remember how much good she did for women's football, because she drove it. She drove it to the place it is today, and without her being such a strong character, it would never be where we are right now.
Do you think he's doing the complete opposite to, say, David Moyes of Man United? So in terms of Mark Sampson not changing too much too quickly, or has he already established himself?
He's made some significant changes that were being called for during the Euros, especially when it comes down to certain players being reintroduced to the squad. And I think that was an important change to show that he's very willing and open, and that he doesn't kind of have any preconceived feelings towards any players. I think that was an important change to make. But I don't think he's doing anything too drastic. He can't really afford to do that in the year that it is when it's World Cup qualifiers. But he has made some.
He's gonna bring a more, from what we know of him at Bristol, he's going to bring a more attacking brand of football. He won't shut up shop. He'll play to play well, and play really nice football. And I think he was quoted when he was at Bristol as saying that his team can lose, but as long as they play to the best of their ability and they play well, that's what he wants to bring to the fans and to everyone. I mean, he said the best teams don't always win football matches, but as long as you go out and you put everything on the line. I think there's a little thing about change, and that you think that immediately something was going bad, so everything has to change. And I know, reading quite a few things, that people think that he should start a whole new team or throw out the more senior players and get in all the younger ones. Mm-hmm. And I personally don't share that view. I think we still have people seem to forget that we have a very young squad as it is. Yeah, you have your senior players like Kelly Smith, but the likes of Steph, Houghton, Ellen White, they've been around for years, but they're still only 24, 25 years old. And they're still about to hit their prime in football, and it's not about throwing them out for younger. I mean, everyone will get their chance. They're still very good players, but it's about nurturing them along that course so they can reach that full potential that you're meant to reach when you're 28, 29 and you're in your prime. So I think the whole player thing, obviously being picked in form is very important, and that's what he's going to be doing. The fact that he's brought Leanne Sanderson back in, she should have never not been picked. But I don't think you should just knee-jerk reaction and say they were all rubbish. Bring in a whole younger set of players, because we've still got a brilliant team. It's just the way you work with them and progress them.
I also think players are going to be very willing to play for him because he's such a passionate guy, and he is a genuinely really nice guy. And he can, from what I've heard from speeches he's made in halftime matches and stuff like that, he can really
motivate.
He can make a player play their best, and I think that's something he's very good at.
Not many managers can bring their team from 3-0 down, do a halftime team talk, and have them win the game 4-3. So he's quite a special quality about him. I was going to
say you could probably only. I can't think of many. Rafael Benitez jumps to mind, of course. I don't know, Mourinho doesn't.
I think he can spark that same passion in.
I think from what a lot of the players said after that match as well, it was him that won them that match, and it was what he said to them in that dressing room. And I think having the ability to really inspire your players is really important.
Definitely. Speaking of inspiring, actually, that's a nice kind of segue. As ardent fans of women's football, what did you think about the FA's 5-year plan to increase popularity of women's football that they unveiled back in 2012, and what's your view on it now, and do you think it's working yet? Creation of an elite performance unit and the appointment of a head of elite development to develop the best young players, delivering a new commercial strategy for women's football to include more broadcast coverage to elevate the profile of the women's game, expanding the FA Women's Super League by introducing a second division in 2014 this year to enable promotion and relegation and grow participation and fan base.
I think it's going well. I mean, I think it's a good start. I like the term 5-year plan because there's never ever going to be a 5-year plan. It's a starting point, and it will continue from there. And maybe it's because in my work I work on development projects, and I know you go through phases, and you start with a 5-year plan and you go to another 5-year plan. Yeah. And it's going to continue. So it's not going to end in 2018. It'll just go on to another phase. But it's a good start. It's all about getting the sustainability in place, building that interest, building a place for young players to grow and nurture them through the system. The whole thing about relegation and promotion, we don't have that at the moment. We're going to start having it as long as they meet criteria. But I think it's necessary, personally, I think it's necessary that it's done that way, because in 10 years' time, you're going to have maybe another 10 teams join the top league, and then you have another 10 teams, and everyone will be sustainable, and it will all, then you can have a fully fluid promotion relegation system. It's just going to take time. And I don't think, I fully agree that you should go up on merit.
Yeah.
But I also think you need to have the stuff behind the scenes first to be able to say I'm in the top league of women's football. I think it's important. Otherwise, you enter the top league and you do badly and you fold.
You need to be able to compete.
Yeah. But then I suppose going up on merit, in theory, would entail that you've got everything right behind the scenes, because you kind of have to have everything right behind the scenes to be doing well on the pitch.
I think maybe I'm an optimist, but I just think that...
She is.
I am an optimist, but I do think that this whole promotion and relegation thing isn't a closed shop, and it's not that it will never happen. I think it will happen. I think the FA do plan it to happen. It just needs to be done progressively and slowly for the longer term rather than the shorter term.
I think the success of the 5-year plan has obviously then been bolstered by London 2012. I think had London 2012 not happened, this 5-year plan might not be quite as progressed as it is now. Yeah. So it's something to kind of bear in mind.
I mean, one thing that also could progress the women's game, another question from Big T, aka Thomas Hewitt, via email. Do you both agree that TV companies don't do enough promotion to encourage the women's game to the general public? And if you disagree, then why? I know you've mentioned it in part, but...
No, I think we both fully agree with that.
I think that it should be the same as the men's game, and that every friendly, every away game, every home game is shown on TV, no matter where it is in the world. The problem is, at the moment, we have all our home games on TV, but as soon as we travel away to Belarus or Ukraine or Cyprus, people can only do it through us or through the likes of us, and they're only reading Twitter, and it's great for us, as it were, personally. But like, we'd love to see it on TV. I mean, there's nothing more we'd love to be able to have fans watch it, be able to watch it and not have to follow our tweets, because even that is us, you know.
Put crimp in the business, but it'd be good for the game.
I mean, it's a whole progression of the women's game, and I don't see why it's not happened already.
A lot of the time as well, women's games, friendlies and internationals are at times, considering the BBC tend to put them on BBC Three anyway, you know, if they're an evening game, you're probably missing Snog, Marry and Avoid, which I don't think people are that fussed about. Or it's like Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and they can't show 3 o'clock games on TV anyway. So there's no real reason why they shouldn't be put on TV.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, it's got a lot better, I guess, in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But I still don't understand it. And I think the print newspapers as well are a lot to blame. They for not providing enough coverage. You might get that much. Yeah. You won't get spreadsheets. And given the amount of pages they dedicate to sport, giving half a page to women's football. Yeah. Really.
I mean, they could give a full page, considering the amount of crap about male footballers' personal lives the amount of drivel they fill up their pages with. You'd think there's.
But people should be proud to see their England team beating somebody or competing in a tournament, you know, and you need to kind of build that pride where people aren't thinking of it as a women's team, but thinking of it as our England team. And, you know, giving them that kind of coverage will, you know, people will read it and say, oh, great, we beat France, you know, because that's always something that people enjoy seeing.